Chapter 1. Fear and Recognition. The Silver Pine Pack Hall smelled of cedarwood, roasted venison, and raw anticipation. Tonight was the proving, when the pack's fiercest warriors could challenge their alpha for leadership. But this year, no one dared. Because this year the alpha was Kieran. Standing at 6'8", with shoulders broad enough to block doorways and hands that could bend steel, Kieran wasn't just formidable. He was terrifying. His size was both armor and curse. Warriors respected him. She-wolves feared him. None dreamed of being his mate because they saw not a partner, but a beast who could snap them like kindling. From her corner near the kitchens, the small Omega watched. Her name was Lena, and she was the pack's invisible ghost. While other she-wolves preened in silk dresses, hoping to catch a beta's eye, Lena remained still. But her amber eyes weren't on the challengers. They were fixed on Kieran. She didn't see the monster others whispered about. She saw the exhaustion in his shoulders after long patrols. She saw how gently he handled newborn pups, his massive hands impossibly careful. She saw the soul-crushing loneliness in his storm-gray eyes. It mirrored her own. The final challenger, a brutish wolf named Garrett, lay whimpering on the packed earth, his arm dislocated. Kieran hadn't broken a sweat. Black tattoos coiled around his torso and arms, seeming to writhe in the firelight. "Does any wolf challenge my rule?" His voice was distant thunder, silencing the hall completely. No one moved. No one breathed. His eyes swept over the she-wolves. Beautiful, strong, capable. Every single one flinched from his gaze, dropping their eyes in submission and fear. Pack Elder Marcus stepped forward. "The proving is complete. Alpha Kieran retains his title. By ancient law, he may now choose his Luna." The hall held its collective breath. Kieran's gaze traveled over averted faces and retreating steps. His heart sank. It was always the same. He'd have to command someone, force a bond from duty and fear. The thought sickened him. "Well?" Marcus prompted gently. "Who will it be?" Kieran opened his mouth, ready to condemn them both to misery, when a clear voice cut through the silence like shattered glass. "I will." The pack turned as one, shock rippling through them. There, stepping from the shadows, was Lena. She looked even smaller in the open space, her simple gray dress hanging loose on her slender frame. Her brown hair absorbed light rather than reflected it, but her chin was lifted, and her amber eyes locked not on the pack, but on Kieran. The Omega? She's insane. He'll crush her. Kieran stared, utterly stunned. Of all the wolves in his pack, she was the last he'd expected. She was quiet, unobtrusive, the one who healed scrapes and comforted pups. The one he'd caught watching him with an expression he couldn't decipher. Now he knew. It wasn't fear. It was understanding. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path between the colossal Alpha and the tiny Omega. The difference was almost comical. He towered over her, his shadow swallowing her whole. "You." His voice was dangerously soft. "Do you understand what you're saying, little wolf?" Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She could smell the power rolling off him. Ozone, iron, wild earth. Terrifying, intoxicating. "I do, Alpha," she whispered, yet it carried in the dead silence. "I accept." Kieran moved closer until he stood before her. She tilted her head all the way back to meet his eyes. He could see the pulse fluttering wildly at her throat, frantic and vulnerable. He could encircle her waist with one hand. The urge to touch her was overwhelming, but he kept his hands fisted at his sides. "Why?" The word was torn from him, raw and unguarded. "You are not afraid?" Lena swallowed hard, gathering her courage. She looked into the storm of his eyes and gave him truth. "I am terrified of you, Alpha, but I'm more terrified of the loneliness in your eyes. It reflects my own." For a breathless moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. The pack, the fire, the very air, it all fell away. Kieran felt her words strike deep. She saw him. Not the alpha, not the monster. The man. Slowly he raised his hand. He didn't grab or command. He simply offered it, palm up, a massive, scarred invitation. The hall watched, spellbound, as the small Omega placed her delicate hand in the alpha's. Her fingers were swallowed by his, a tiny bird nestled in granite. For the first time anyone could remember, a true, unguarded smile touched Alpha Kieran's lips. Chapter 2. The Mountain's Heart. The walk to the Alpha's lodge felt both endless and instant. Kieran's hand wrapped around hers, not crushing, but impossibly secure. She was acutely aware of the silence trailing them, a bubble of shock that popped only when the heavy oak door closed, shutting out the entire pack. Inside, the lodge was vast and stark. A great hearth dominated one wall, embers casting dancing shadows over fur rugs and heavy furniture. No personal touches, no warmth. It was a place where someone slept and ruled, but didn't live. Kieran released her hand. The absence felt like loss. He moved to the fireplace, his broad back to her, and rebuilt the fire with quiet efficiency. Muscles shifted beneath his skin like tectonic plates. The silence stretched. "You can still leave." His voice seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. He didn't turn around. "No one would blame you. They'd call it wisdom." Lena stood rooted, arms wrapped around herself. The reality crashed down upon her. This was his space, saturated with his powerful, intimidating scent. She was an intruder, a tiny, fragile thing in a giant's den. "Is that what you want?" she asked quietly. He jabbed at a log with more force than necessary, sending sparks up the chimney. "What I want is irrelevant. I need a Luna, not a terrified Omega who looks at me like I'm about to devour her." The words were harsh, but Lena heard the pain laced through them. This was his defense, the armor of a wolf wounded too many times. She took a tentative step forward, then another. "You haven't..." "Haven't what?" "Devoured me." She reached the edge of the hearth, heat kissing her skin. His eyes narrowed. "The night is young." "Stop it." A spark of defiance ignited within her. "Stop trying to scare me away. You offered me your hand. I took it. That meant something." "It was a gesture," he growled, turning to face her. "A performance. You think this is a fairy tale? That you can fix me?" Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I don't want to fix you. I don't think you're broken. She faltered. "I saw a wolf who was always standing apart. I know what that feels like." Kieran stared at her, chest heaving with deep, ragged breaths. The anger drained as quickly as it had flared, leaving profound weariness. He ran a hand over his face. "Gods, you have no idea what you've gotten into." It was the first time he'd said her name. It rolled off his tongue like a prayer. "Then show me," she whispered. He was before her in 2 silent strides. He didn't touch her, but he was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the darker flecks of gray in his irises, smell the storm-clean scent of him. "You are an Omega," he said, his voice a low thrum that vibrated in her bones. "Your nature is to soothe, to yield. Mine is to take, to command. My wolf is not gentle. The bond, if it takes, will be overwhelming. Your spirit could be lost in mine. Are you prepared for that?" His brutal honesty was more terrifying than any threat. He was giving her every reason to run, laying bare the truth of being mated to an alpha of his magnitude. Lena's heart hammered. This was the precipice where the cautious Omega should flee. But the woman who'd seen his loneliness stood her ground. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hand. Ignoring the tremor in her fingers, she pressed her palm flat against his chest, over the steady, powerful beat of his heart. The contact was electric. His skin was hot and smooth over solid muscle. She felt him suck in a sharp breath, his entire body going rigid. "My spirit is stronger than you think," she said, her voice gaining strength as she held his stunned gaze. "And I'm not yielding now." For a suspended moment they stood there, the massive Alpha and the tiny Omega, her hand on his heart, a bridge of skin and courage between two solitary worlds. Kieran's iron control began to fracture. A low, possessive rumble started deep in his chest. His eyes bled from gray to luminous gold, his wolf rising. The beast wanted her. His hands came up to hover at her hips, fingers splayed, nearly spanning her entire waist. "Lena!" he growled, a final desperate warning. "Last chance. Run." She stood on her toes, leaning into his heat, her amber eyes blazing with fire he'd never known she possessed. "No." Chapter 3. The claiming, that single word shattered his restraint. The rumble in Kieran's chest erupted into a visceral growl that shook the foundations. His hands closed on her hips, not brutal, but absolute. His fingers pressed into her softness, and Lena gasped, not in pain, but in overwhelming sensation. "Then you are mine," he rasped, his voice thick with man and beast. In one fluid motion he swept her into his arms. Lena cried out, her arms flying around his neck as he cradled her against his chest. Solid rock and coiled steel. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his strides eating the distance to his bedchamber. The room was as sparse as the main lodge. A massive bed hewn from dark wood, piled with furs. A single window open to cold night air. He laid her in the center of the furs, dark pelts a stark contrast to her pale skin. He loomed over her, blocking out the firelight, golden eyes burning like twin suns. He braced his hands on either side of her head, caging her in. "I will try to be gentle," he gritted out, the words a struggle. "But my wolf has wanted for so long. He doesn't know gentleness. He only knows mine." "Show me," Lena whispered, trembling but steady. "I'm not made of glass. I won't break." A shudder racked his frame. Her use of his name, without title, without fear, was his undoing. He lowered his head, his nose skimming her throat. She froze, every nerve alight. This was the moment of claiming, where the Alpha's bite would seal their fate. But his teeth didn't find her skin. Instead, his lips brushed the frantic pulse at the base of her throat. A whisper of touch, achingly soft, devastatingly intimate. He inhaled deeply, memorizing her essence, honeyed milk and wildflowers. "You smell like peace," he murmured against her skin, voice ragged. "I haven't known peace since I was a boy." The raw confession broke something open inside her. Tears spilled over, tracing hot paths down her temples. He felt the wetness and went still. He pulled back, golden eyes wide with panic. "I've hurt you." "No." Lena's hands slid up to cup his jaw, stubble rough against her palms. She held him there, refusing to let him retreat. "You haven't. It's just no one has ever... I've never felt..." She couldn't find words, so she showed him. She pulled his face down and pressed her lips to his. It was clumsy, innocent, born of emotion rather than experience. But its effect was cataclysmic. A broken sound, half growl, half sob, escaped him. For a moment he remained frozen, as if her touch had turned him to stone. Then the dam broke. His mouth moved over hers with desperate, hungry reverence. A kiss that spoke of centuries of loneliness, of deep, aching need finally being met. One hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, while the other arm slid beneath her, pulling her flush against the hard length of his body. Lena drowned in him, in the taste of him, wild and dark and faintly mint, in the feel of his tongue sweeping into her mouth, claiming her in a way more profound than any bite. This was union, not conquest. Her body sang with strange new heat, pooling low in her belly, making her arch against him. He tore his mouth from hers, breath coming in ragged gusts, forehead resting against hers, eyes squeezed shut as if in pain. "Lena," he choked out, I need. The alpha, who commanded hundreds, was rendered speechless by a small omega. "Then take," she breathed, echoing his words back to him. "I am yours." That was all the permission the beast needed. His hands went to the laces of her dress. He didn't rip them. With patience that belied the feverish hunger in his eyes, he worked the ties loose, knuckles brushing her stomach, making her gasp. He peeled the garment away, revealing her to firelight and his hungry gaze. She felt exposed, vulnerable, her slender body pale and trembling against dark furs. She expected raw lust. Instead, she saw worship. "By the moon," he whispered, voice full of awe, "you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." What followed was heat and hunger, tenderness and possession. He learned the landscape of her body with devastating focus, hands everywhere at once, mapping every sigh, every tremble. When his fingers finally found her slick, heated core, she sobbed his name. "Look at me," he commanded, voice dark velvet. Her glazed amber eyes fluttered open and locked with his. "You are mine," he growled, promise and threat intertwined. And as he finally pushed into her, filling her completely, stretching her in a way that was both shock and the most right thing she'd ever felt, Lena knew it was true. She was his. But as he began to move with power and rhythm that stole her breath and promised to steal her soul, she made a silent vow. He was hers. 2. Chapter 4. Whispers and Wounds. Lena awoke to warmth and weight. Dawn's pale light filtered through the window, painting the room in gray and gold. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt it. A heavy, muscular arm draped possessively over her waist. The solid, furnace-like heat of a massive body curled around her back. Kieran. Memories flooded back like a warm tide. The intensity of his touch. The raw vulnerability in his growls. The shocking rightness of being beneath him. Surrounded by him. Filled by him. His scent, storm and wild, was all over her, on her skin, in her hair, woven into her very breath. She lay perfectly still, savoring it. His breathing was deep and even, chest rising and falling against her back. In sleep, the harsh lines had smoothed from his face. He looked younger, almost peaceful. Carefully, she began to shift, wanting to turn and face him. The moment she moved, the arm around her tightened, pulling her flush against him. A low, sleepy growl rumbled in his chest. Pure, primal possession. "Stay," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep, nose nuzzling the nape of her neck. A small, happy smile touched Lena's lips. This was what she'd wanted. This connection, this simple intimacy. It couldn't last. Raised voices from outside shattered the quiet. They were muffled by thick walls, but the anger was clear. "He cannot be serious, Marcus. An Omega, as our Luna?" The voice was sharp, female, dripping with disdain. Lena recognized it as belonging to Isla, a strong, beautiful beta who'd made no secret of her Luna ambitions. Kieran was instantly awake. Lena felt his entire body go rigid. The peaceful man of moments before was gone, replaced by the alert, formidable Alpha. "The proving law is clear, Isla," came Elder Marcus's weary reply. "The Alpha may choose any unmated she-wolf. He chose the Omega." "He chose a mouse," Isla shot back. "A weakling who can't even command respect in the kitchens, let alone lead a pack in war. Our allies will laugh. Our enemies will see vulnerability. This isn't a choice. It's an indulgence. A dangerous one." Lena flinched, as if struck. The happy warmth froze into a hard, cold lump. She tried to pull away, to shrink into herself, But Kieran's arm held her fast, no longer sleepy embrace, but a band of iron. Her name, Kieran's voice cut through the door, low and lethally quiet though he hadn't raised it, is Lena. Dead silence fell outside. He shifted, rolling Lena onto her back and looming over her. Morning light caught the grim set of his jaw, the stormy intensity back in his gray eyes. He searched her face and knew he saw the hurt, the shame she tried to hide. "Their words are nothing," he stated, thumb stroking her cheek with surprising gentleness. "The opinions of betas who don't understand an alpha's wolf are dust in the wind." "But they're right," Lena whispered. "I'm not a leader. I'm not strong like her." Kieran's expression darkened. Strength isn't always a snarl and show of teeth. His gaze dropped to where his arm wrapped around her, to faint marks his passion had left on her pale skin. Possessive fire ignited in his eyes. "You have strength they can't comprehend. You faced me. You're still here. That makes you the strongest wolf in this pack." He lowered his head, lips a breath from hers. He kissed her, not with desperate hunger, but with firm, claiming certainty. A kiss meant to seal his words, to brand her with his conviction. But as he pulled away and rose from the bed, his powerful form silhouetted against dawn, Lena saw tension in his shoulders. He'd heard the whispers, and despite his words, they mattered. They challenged his judgment, and by extension, his authority. The door to the bedchamber closed with a soft but definitive click, leaving her alone in the vast, rumpled bed. The scent of their joining was still thick, but now tainted with cold reality. She was his chosen, his mate. But she was also an Omega, and the pack wouldn't simply accept her. Kieran's battle in the proving had been easy. Her battle for their place was just beginning, and as she lay listening to muted arguing voices, the first seed of doubt took root. Had her brave choice not eased his loneliness, but only traded it for a different kind of war? Chapter 5. The breaking point days passed in mounting tension. Kieran presented Lena as his chosen Luna at the next gathering, his hand firm on the small of her back. The silence was deafening. She felt hundreds of eyes, curious, hostile, pitying. Warriors who respected Kieran looked at her with confusion. She-wolves looked with thinly veiled contempt. Ela stood at the front, expression perfectly neutral, but her eyes cold and calculating. Kieran's solution was proximity. He kept Lena by his side constantly, in meetings with huntmasters and border patrols, a silent ornament in a world of strategy and strength. He'd reach for her often, fingers brushing her hand, possessive touch on her waist, trying to physically cement her place. But the more he tried, the more distance grew between them. At night, he was different. The stern alpha mask would fall away, replaced by raw, almost frantic need. His lovemaking was intense, passionate, a desperate attempt to lose himself in her, to reaffirm their connection. He'd worship her body with reverence that made her want to weep. But afterward, in the dark, he'd be silent, lost in thoughts she couldn't reach. The weight of the pack's disapproval was a wall he shouldered alone, and it was slowly crushing him. The crack appeared on the 5th day. A young, hot-headed beta from Border Patrol was giving his report, gaze continually flicking to Lena with undisguised scorn. "The Ironjaw scouts are getting bolder, Alpha. They crossed the river at Blackstone Shallows. They left this." The beta tossed a rough gray stone onto the map table. From Ironjaw territory, a deliberate provocation. Kieran's face was granite. "And your response?" "We tracked them, but they retreated across the border. We held our line as we should." The beta puffed out his chest, then gestured vaguely at Lena. "It's just the men are talking, Alpha. They say the Ironjaw wolves are laughing, calling us the Omega Pack. They say our Alpha is distracted." The air went cold. Lena's face flamed with humiliation. She wanted to disappear. Kieran went utterly still. The quiet was more terrifying than any outburst. "Get out," he said, voice so low it was almost vibration. The beta's bravado evaporated. "Alpha, I only meant get out." The command was final, absolute, laced with killing frost. The beta and warriors scrambled from the room, leaving Lena and Kieran alone in tense silence. Lena took a shaky breath. "Kieran..." He slammed his fist down on the heavy oak table. The sound was thunderclap. Wood splintered under impact, the map scattering, the gray stones skittering to the floor. "Enough!" He wasn't shouting at her, but fury was a living thing in the room, and she was caught in its storm. She flinched back, heart hammering. He turned on her, eyes blazing with frustration that had finally boiled over. "Is this what it will be? Every day, every challenge to my authority, every insult from another pack, tied back to you? To this?" He gestured wildly between them. The words were a physical blow. Lena felt them tear through her, shredding fragile hope. "You think I wanted this?" she whispered, voice trembling. "You think I wanted to be the reason your pack doubts you?" "Then what did you want?" he roared, patience snapping. "What did you think would happen when you stepped out of the shadows? Did you think it would be a fairy tale? That love would conquer all?" He spat the word as if it were curse. Lena stared at him, world crumbling. The man who'd held her gently, who'd whispered she was peace, he was gone. In his place was an angry, cornered alpha, and he was looking at her as if she were the source of all his problems. She took a step back, then another, arms wrapping around herself. "I thought," she said, voice breaking, "that I was accepting the challenge of being with you. I didn't know the challenge was making you resent me for it." She turned and walked out, leaving him standing amid wreckage. He didn't try to stop her. Chapter 6. The Luna's Choice. Lena didn't return to the lodge. She couldn't. The memory of his fury, the splintered table, the way he'd looked at her, it was a wound that bled anew with every heartbeat. She fled to the only place she'd ever felt safe, the quiet clearing near the healer's hut, where she'd often retreated when the world became too loud. She curled at the base of a great oak, the ancient tree a small comfort. Tears came then, great heaving sobs torn from her chest. She'd been a fool. A romantic, idiotic fool. She'd seen his pain and believed her love could be balm. But you couldn't heal a wound by pressing yourself into it. You only got blood on your hands. He resented her, saw her as a chain. The connection she'd felt had been illusion, the desperate hunger of a lonely man, not foundation of a bond. The sun dipped below trees, casting skeletal shadows. The air grew cold. She didn't move. Physical discomfort was nothing compared to the hollow ache inside. A soft footfall on moss made her flinch. She looked up, expecting Kieran, heart giving a treacherous, hopeful leap. It was Isla. The beta female stood a few feet away, arms crossed, expression not gloating but coldly assessing. "So, the first storm and you run." Lena wiped her face. Anger briefly cut through despair. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, for this pack to be strong." Isla's gaze was pitiless. "You heard him. You saw him. He's breaking, and you're the cause. Every day you stand beside him, the cracks widen. The Ironjaw confrontation is coming. If they sense division, if they sense weakness, they won't just take land. They'll take lives, kill our warriors, enslave our young, all because a little Omega wanted to play Luna." The words were crafted to inflict maximum damage, and they did. They painted a future of blood and fire with Lena at the center, catalyst for downfall. "What would you have me do?" Lena's voice was broken thread. "Leave. Spare him the choice. Spare the pack the carnage. Go to the human towns. Disappear." Let the story be that the alpha's fierce nature was too much for his fragile mate. It's tragedy, not weakness. The pack will rally. He'll be strong again. Leave. The word echoed in the hollow of her chest. To walk away from him. To never feel his touch again. To never see the rare smile that felt like sun breaking through storm clouds. The pain was so acute, it was physical nausea. But then she saw Kieran's face twisted in frustration. Heard the beta's scornful voice. The Omega Pack. Isla was right. Her love was poison. She looked up at the beta, amber eyes empty. And if I stay? Then you'll watch the man you claim to love be slowly torn apart by duty he can't fulfill with you at his side. You'll watch him grow to hate you. And when war comes, you'll watch him die for it. Isla leaned down, voice dropping to venomous whisper. The choice is yours, little ghost. Die a martyr for your pack, or live as the reason it fell. Isla turned and melted into woods, leaving Lena alone in gathering dark. The choice was no choice at all. A new sound rose in Lena's throat, one that had never come from her before. It started as low whimper, breath of pure agony. Then it built, fueled by love, willing to destroy itself, into a long, mournful, heart-wrenching howl. The sound of a bond breaking, the sound of a soul tearing in two. The Omega's howl of surrender. Back in the lodge, Kieran stood by the shattered table, knuckles bloody, anger spent, leaving only cold, sickening dread. He'd replayed his words 100 times. With each repetition, shame grew. Then he heard it. A howl, thin, desperate, carried on wind. Lena's voice, but a sound he'd never heard from her. A sound of utter, absolute despair. His head snapped up. His wolf, which had been pacing and snarling, fell silent, then let out panicked whine. The bond, the fragile newborn thing he'd been so careless with, screamed in agony. In that moment, politics, pack, Ironjaw, all of it vanished. There was only her, and the sound of her heart breaking, and he knew with certainty that froze blood in his veins that he was the one who'd broken it. A roar of denial tore from his lungs. He exploded from the lodge, not as Alpha, but as panicked mate, his massive form a blur as he followed the devastating sound of her sorrow. Praying to the moon, he wasn't too late. Chapter 7. The Alpha's Truth. Kieran found her at the base of the great oak. Small, crumpled, shivering. Her scent, usually honey and wildflowers, was saturated with bitter despair. Lena. Her name was ragged prayer on his lips. He fell to his knees before her, forest floor crunching under his weight. A giant brought low. She didn't look at him. Her face was buried in her knees, body trembling with silent sobs. He reached for her, hand, the same one that had shattered the table, hovering in air, afraid to touch. The sight of his bloody knuckles filled him with self-loathing. Look at me, he pleaded, voice stripped of all alpha command, raw and broken. Please, little wolf, look at me. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her amber eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, utterly empty. The light he'd seen that first night, the defiant spark that had called to his soul, was gone. Extinguished by him. The sight was physical blow to his chest. Don't, she whispered. Just don't. Don't what? Don't pretend I understand now. Isla is right. I'm breaking you. I'm breaking the pack. Fresh tear traced through dirt on her cheek. I'll leave at dawn. You can say I was too weak. They'll believe it. Leave. The word was death sentence. Cold, final darkness closed around his heart. His wolf howled in utter denial, desperate internal scream of loss. No. The word was guttural growl torn from deepest part of him. No, Lena. You're not leaving. You heard what you said to me, she cried, anguish breaking through numbness. You resent me. You see me as chain, as weakness. How can I stay knowing that? Because I was wrong, he roared, confession bursting from him. He slammed fist into his own chest, over his heart. I was wrong. I'm a fool, Lena. A blind, arrogant fool who let whispers and threats poison the only true thing that's ever been mine. He finally dared to touch her. His hands, so large, so capable of destruction, cupped her face with unbearable gentleness. Thumbs stroked tear-stained cheeks. You are not my weakness, he breathed, voice trembling. You are my strength. When you stood before me in that hall, you were the bravest wolf I'd ever seen. You looked at the monster and saw a man. You're the only one who ever has. He leaned his forehead against hers, eyes squeezed shut, breath mingling with her sobs. My anger, it wasn't at you. Never at you. It was at my own helplessness. I'm an alpha. I'm supposed to fix things with strength and fury, but I can't fight this with fang and claw. I can't force the pack to see what I see in you. It terrifies me. It made me feel weak. And I took that fear out on you. His voice broke. I'm so sorry, my brave, beautiful mate. I'm so sorry. It was the first time he'd called her mate without weight of duty, filled only with reverence and regret. Lena stared at him. Ice around her heart cracked at raw pain in his voice. She saw tears tracking through grime on his face. This wasn't the untouchable alpha. This was Kieran, hurting, vulnerable, begging forgiveness. The pack, the war, she stammered. Let them come, he whispered fiercely, gray eyes blazing with unshakable conviction. Let every enemy we have come to our gates. They'll break against us because I'm stronger with you than I ever was without you. You are my Luna, not because of law, but because my wolf chose you. I choose you, now and always. He didn't wait for answer. He lowered his head and captured her lips. It was nothing like kisses before. Not hungry, not desperate, not possessive. It was apology, vow, sealing. As he kissed her, pouring every ounce of regret, love, and unwavering commitment into that single touch, Lena felt shattered pieces of her soul begin to knit back together. Stronger than before. She kissed him back, hands clutching his shoulders. Not in fear, but in grounding, in acceptance. When they broke apart, both breathless, the emptiness in her eyes was gone, replaced by glimmer of old fire, now tempered by deeper understanding. Kieran gathered her into his arms, lifting her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He cradled her against his chest, her head tucked under his chin. Come home, he murmured into her hair. Our home. As he carried her through dark woods back to the lodge, Lena knew whispers wouldn't stop. Challenges wouldn't disappear. But the crack in their foundation had been filled, not with granite, but with gold, forged in fire of his atonement and her forgiveness. They were no longer just Alpha and Omega. They were a pair. United. Chapter 8. The Luna's power. The change wasn't instantaneous, but it was profound. Kieran didn't merely bring Lena back. He reinstated her with unshakable finality. The next morning, when Elder Marcus and stern-faced Isla arrived for briefing, they found the shattered table replaced. Kieran stood behind it, and seated beside him, posture straight and chin high, was Lena. Her amber eyes, once shy and downcast, now met Isla's gaze directly. No challenge, no aggression, just deep, unassailable calm. The emptiness of last night was replaced by quiet, luminous strength. Isla's neutral mask slipped, revealing flash of surprise and cold fury. Alpha, it's good to see the disruption resolved, she said carefully. There was no disruption, Beta, Kieran replied, voice layered with steel. Only a misunderstanding, now permanently resolved. His hand rested on Lena's shoulder, simple, possessive gesture that spoke volumes. Proceed with your report. The meeting continued, but dynamics had shifted. Kieran no longer just listened. He consulted. The Ironjaw insult at Blackstone Shallows, he said when the scout finished. He looked at Lena. What does your instinct tell you, Luna? Prelude to war or test of resolve? All eyes turned to her. Isla's narrowed, waiting for her to falter. Lena took slow breath, reaching for her Omega gift, feeling the pack's emotional currents. She didn't see battle lines. She felt intent. It's a probe, she said, voice clear and sure. They're looking for fear. They left the stone not as declaration but as bait. They want you to react with rage, to overextend. They're not testing strength. They're testing patience. Silence fell. Hunt masters and warriors looked at her, then at Kieran. It was perspective none of them had considered. Kieran's eyes gleamed with pride. My thoughts exactly. He turned to the scout. Double patrols, but hold the line. No, pursuit across border. Let their bait rot. By crediting her, he'd validated her, forced the pack to see her value. She wasn't just comfort. She was counsel. Later, a young she-wolf brought her sickly pup to the healer's hut, where Lena was sorting herbs. The mother looked at Lena with distrust. Without word, Lena knelt before the shivering pup. She didn't need herbs. She reached out, Omega warmth radiating from her palms, and placed them gently on the pup's fevered head. Soft, golden light emanated from her touch, visible manifestation of her soothing energy, rarely seen so vividly. The pup's whimpers ceased. Breathing evened. The fevered glaze cleared. It nuzzled into her hand with soft sigh. The mother stared, jaw slack, hostility washed away by awe and relief. How? Your fear was making it worse, Lena said softly. He just needed to feel safe. Word spread like wildfire. The Omega wasn't just the Alpha's strange choice. She had power they'd forgotten to value. The power to calm, to heal, to unite through empathy. That night as Kieran and Lena walked through pack grounds, the atmosphere was different. Averted gazes were fewer. Several wolves nodded respectfully. Back in their chamber, Kieran pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. You were magnificent today, he murmured, voice thick with emotion. They're starting to see you, the wolf I see. Lena leaned into his strength. They're starting to see us. He pulled back, gray eyes serious. The Ironjaw Alpha, Theron, arrives tomorrow with his retinue. He's a brute who respects only undeniable power. He'll try to humiliate you, to humiliate us. Let him try, Lena said, faint smile touching her lips. He thinks our strength is only in your size, your fury. He doesn't understand the strength of a bond. Kieran's answering smile was fierce and proud. Chapter 9. The final test. The Ironjaw delegation arrived at noon under bleak gray sky. Large, grim wolves in rough pelts and leather armor. At their head was Alpha Theron, a mountain of a man with grizzled beard and cruel mouth. His gaze swept the Silverpine assembly with open contempt. Formal greetings were tense. Theron ignored the traditional offering of salt and bread, deliberate insult. Kieran, Theron grunted, voice like grinding stones. Your pack looks soft. The air smells of honey, not iron. His eyes slid to Lena, standing steadfast at her mate's side. Slow, ugly smirk spread across his face. And this is the source, the Omega I've heard so much about. Do you keep her on leash, or does she simply heal well? Anger rippled through Silverpine warriors. Kieran's frame tightened, low growl building. But before he could speak, Lena's hand rested lightly on his arm. A silent command. Wait. She took single, graceful step forward. The clearing fell silent. She was so small before hulking Theron, dove facing hawk. Alpha Theron, she said, voice not loud, but carrying crystalline clarity that cut through tension. We welcome you with our ancestors' traditions. It's a pity you find our bread and salt beneath you. It's offered in peace, To refuse speaks only of your own intentions. Theron's smirk vanished. He hadn't expected words. He'd expected cowering. He took threatening step forward, power rolling out in suffocating wave. Many Silverpine wolves flinched. Lena did not. She stood ground, amber eyes holding his, unblinking. "You have spirit for a little mouse," he sneered, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. "But spirit breaks. I'll enjoy watching it break when I take Blackstone Shallows and Silverwood Valley from your indulgent alpha." This was it, the moment of truth. Kieran vibrated with need to intervene, to tear the wolf's throat out. But he held ground, trusting her. Lena didn't look at Kieran for reassurance. She didn't retreat. Instead, she smiled. Small, sad, filled with pity. "You are so loud, Alpha Theron," she said, voice still soft, yet every word landed with weight of prophecy. "You think power is only in snarl, threat, taking. You're like a winter storm, all bluster and cold. You'll rage, you'll freeze, then you'll pass." She glanced at Kieran, love and pride shining in her eyes like beacon. But the mountain remains, patient, deep, unbreakable. She turned back to Theron, voice dropping, becoming intimate, deadly. "You came looking for crack in our foundation. You won't find one. The only weakness here is your own. The weakness of a heart that knows only how to take and never how to build. You're already losing, and you're too blind to see it." Theron stared, face a thundercloud of confusion and burgeoning rage. He'd been insulted by kings, but never like this. Never with such calm, devastating truth. He'd come to provoke fight, to expose fractured pack. Instead, this tiny Omega had looked into his soul and found it wanting. His own warriors shifted uncomfortably, her words striking chord they dared not acknowledge. He had no retort. No counter to strength that wasn't physical. With final, inarticulate snarl of pure frustration, he turned on his heel. "This isn't over, Kieran." "But it is," Kieran said, voice rolling with absolute authority of a king whose throne is secure. "You've been heard. You've been answered. Next time you or your wolves set foot on my land, it will be active war, and we'll be waiting." The Ironjaw delegation retreated, proud procession now sullen, defeated shuffle. The silence they left wasn't tension, but awe. Then a single sound broke it, low, respectful howl from Elder Marcus. It was joined by another, then another. Huntmasters, warriors, she-wolves, the entire Silverpine pack raised voices in unified chorus. Not for their alpha, but for their Luna. She'd faced the storm not with snarl, but with shield of truth. She'd won without throwing single punch. Kieran turned to Lena, pulling her into his arms, lifting her off her feet. He looked into eyes of the small, brave Omega who'd terrified every other she-wolf, and saw his future, his strength, his everything. "The mountain remains," he whispered against her lips, voice thick with love and pride. "And the mountain is mine," she whispered back, sealing her claim with kiss as triumphant howls of their pack echoed around them. A symphony of bond unbroken, of strength, finally, completely understood. The end. So tell us, whose strength proved more pivotal? Kieran's unwavering power and authority, or Lena's unexpected courage and emotional intelligence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this tale of fated mates and unbreakable bonds captured your heart, follow for more thrilling paranormal romances. Your next adventure awaits,